Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Application Packaging Experts Roundtable. We've got everybody muted on the session. Please use the chat for questions throughout. We're going to be talking about a wide range of topics around packaging and management and deployment, so pretty much anything is appropriate here, and we'll make time at the end to answer questions, but encourage you to send them in as they come to you. And we will, as always, have a video following the event. On the registration page, you also see a history of all the videos of previous sessions. So today's speakers is an interesting slide for today, because you got me. I'm the product manager at Flexera for our security products, and including Admin Studio and Software Vulnerability Manager and others. Kieran may be joining us. He's a senior product manager on my team, responsible for the same solution area, but he's having some technical difficulties. So hopefully he makes it on soon. Mike is also not joining us today. He is under the weather. We wish him quick recovery. And then I get to introduce a new person to the roundtable, who I appreciate extra, given I'd be at this roundtable all by myself. My friend Ronald joins us from SparkleFlow and AppDeployNews. I met, how long ago did we meet, Ronald? It's got to be 10?
It was the first packaging event in the Netherlands.
Yeah. You had a background in music, and I dabbled in music, and so
you run AppDeploy back then, and I had a banner on AppDeploy, and we started talking about stuff, and that's how we met online.
Yep, some banner ads on AppDeploy, and actually that's a good segue. We've got. Actually, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself real quick before we dive into that?
Hi. Yes, thank you, Bob. I'm Ronald Funk. I am been in IT since 1991. I've done a lot of packaging myself back from 2000, I guess, till 2005. Then I started a company for application packagers. We had a bunch of consultants, and we started working on a management tool to streamline the application packaging process, because we did a lot of projects simultaneous, and I had to switch people back and forth, and we needed something to streamline it, to make it very easy to jumpstart on a new project. So that's when we developed SparkleFlow.
That's cool. I think it's one of those things that I've heard come up time and time again as an origin story for certain management tools or utilities that, as a consultant or as a service provider, you have to solve problems, and you don't find the tools, you build them, and at some point you say others could benefit from this.
Yeah, exactly that. I'm all about efficiency. And I did a lot of packaging on other projects, and it always amazed me the lack of structure, how people did the projects with just an Excel sheet, and hundreds of applications needed to be packaged, and the whole team was just working in one sheet, and that was it. And there was a bunch of folders with packages with all kind of versions and no documentation whatsoever. And every 4 years, when I needed to implement a new operating system, then the whole circus went back from square one. So a lot of inefficiency. And then when I started my own company with a partner, I wanted to do it better, to do it more efficient, more structured, and
cool. So a heavy
Yeah.
packaging background. I mean, that qualifies you to be right here. We're glad to have you. And
Yeah.
the the reason, I mean, apart from you having the perfect background to join here, it, that really drove it to be this session was AppDeployNews, which is a new
Yeah.
community that recently launched. And I went into what they call it, the Wayback Machine, the Internet Archive, and you can see
Yeah.
old websites. This is one of the oldest like full renders because a lot of times the images don't all load. But
Hmm.
that on the left there is my old app deploy site before it became IT Ninja, and it was really all about sharing all the packaging tools. That's how it started first. It was more of a clearinghouse for like every endpoint management system that existed at the time. And I'd find out about one, and it was a static page too. I had to write a static page for every tool that I discovered, and it would just
Yeah.
do kind of more and more market research until that built up. And then the forums kind of took off as a place for people to come discuss packaging because there wasn't, these big platforms that exist today. So it was a niche area, and I was told by everybody that it was kind of a waste of time. Nobody really cared about this stuff but me. And
Okay.
yeah, I was like, I'm like, see that
Mm.
building over there? It's got 1,000 computers in it. There's
Yeah.
a handful of people in there that care quite a bit about how to automate and manage the environment.
Exactly.
So luckily, I didn't listen to the naysayers, but the it took off mostly because of the forum. A couple of heavy contributors joined and would answer questions. At the first, it was just me answering questions,
Hmm.
and I worked as a packager. I was like a SMS administrator for a big government network of like 10,000 machines, and I did
Hmm.
like tier 3 support and things. So I'd solve problems, and then I'd come home and put my notes on AppDeploy to kind of share what I've figured out that day or whatever new technology or solution, or I write an occasional article. But the thing that really catapulted the site was the concept of a package knowledge base, where there
Yeah.
was more of a dynamic. I had to teach myself ASP, which is basically VB script in a web page, to write something more dynamic so that you could add an application and people could contribute tips about that application. And that was really the resource that took off because there wasn't any place else like it at the time. So pretty much every endpoint management solution didn't want to provide support to their customers on how to deal with the third-party applications they were trying to deploy. They wanted to support their management system. So
Hmm.
they, because AppDeploy was not owned by any one company, it was kind of an independent, agnostic, product agnostic website with no real favoritism for Microsoft or anything like that. Everybody felt comfortable pointing everyone there, and I think that's where the crowd grew and grew. Um,
Yeah.
and then a quick history after that. Case acquired it, and then it was no longer completely independent, and it slowly, became something else. They did a Case did a really good job of following through on their promise to me, which was to keep their hands out of it and not
Hmm.
mess it up and try to take it in any different direction. And that went well. But when Case was then acquired by Dell,
It's
I
a different
got,
story.
they saw the possibility of this thing,
Yeah.
and I wanted it rewritten. I wanted, it didn't scale very well. We got SQL injection attacked and things like this because I wrote it. I'm not a developer. I didn't know about SQL injection until I got hit by it.
Okay.
And so kind of part of the deal of getting the investment to put together a team to build a newer, better app deploy required that it have more potential than just application deployment topics. So I had to come up with something a little more generic, and IT Ninja was born, and that was written from the ground up with an agile Scrum team, and we iterated, improved it. It launched to a pretty rocky start. The AppDeploy fans were not particularly happy with the early versions of IT Ninja, but it's come quite a long way since then. I haven't had my hands on it in years, since I came to Flexera like 5 years ago, and even a couple years before that. I was kind of out of it, and it's on its own now. So when Ronald came to me with the idea that he wanted to give, the concept of AppDeploy another shot, I said, first I warned him, it's not the same world we used to live in. But with all those caveats and potential pitfalls aside, he's gone ahead, and I think we've got here is a pretty solid start. Nice collection of information. How's it going so far?
Well, it's going great. We've been online since half of January. Just a little bit of history for me as well. Like we said, I had a banner on AppDeploy. That's how I came to know the website. But before then, I was a packager, and the first website I was pointed to was this website. So when I started packaging, this was my Bible. So like a lot of people from that time, the old school packagers, they all know the website, and we really loved the whole concept of sharing information. When I started the company in 2005, I found that I had also a lot of information gathered during the packaging years, and I started a Dutch knowledge base, because I found when you started Googling, and it favored Dutch websites before English websites. So I had a similar kind of website, much smaller, obviously, but it catapulted the awareness of our company. In a year or two, we were very known by the people in the Netherlands. So I have some background in starting a knowledge base as well. I think a year ago I wanted to look for something like AppDeploy to create some awareness in the rest of the world for our product, and we found information scattered in about 75 websites. They all have a little bit of information, but nothing was like the AppDeploy experience. So that's why we came of the idea to reboot it. But yeah, like Bob said, he warned me, well, not sure if it will work like it worked back in the days. And I can agree. Times are very different. There is an overload of information from social media, websites, and so forth. So we thought about why shouldn't it work, and how could it work in this time of day. And we decided to start gathering information ourselves and not be dependent of the community, because a lot of packagers, they are very busy and they really don't like to document stuff. And to go to a website and to document it over there another time, I don't think they will do it. Myself, I wouldn't do it like that anymore, I guess. But they really still are searching for information. We did a poll on LinkedIn and asked the packagers if they where do they get the information, and 90% said, well, we still search the internet every day. So there's still how do you say it? A reason to start something like this, but we have to get the information there some other way. And that's why we integrated it with our tool, SparkFlow. SparkFlow is a workflow management tool for application packages and application management. And we get a lot of information in there. So we started to integrate the tool. So when you use it, when you fill it in the tool, which you do anyway, it will be shared with the website, vice versa. And we are working on other integrations as well. So we're not just focused on our own product, but we want to share every bit of information from every available source and still make it a website where we share information from everybody for everybody. So what we are working on right now is integration with the Winget repository. There's a lot of information there. And we are also working on an API with artificial intelligence. So yeah, as of now, we are on a nearly 300. This is an older screenshot, I guess. But we're hoping within a few weeks to be up to 1,000 entries and keep it growing from there.
Cool. Yeah, I mean that's like I said, that was the tipping point for AppDeploy being a valuable resource was the tip library. And at the time when there weren't a lot of competing places to share the information, my use case that I would present people to convince them to use it was that if you record it here, you too can come back in the future and see your notes. So exactly. It was almost like your own personal notes, but you're putting them in a place that other people can benefit from them, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So package research, yeah, there's more and more places. The AI thing is certainly interesting.
Yeah, it is.
There's, ChatGPT doesn't know the latest information. I think it's about a year old, the data that it's been trained on. So that, you can't say what's the latest version, where do I download it, and what are the command line details for, the new whatever. And it can't necessarily do that, but obviously it's headed that way. So it'll be very interesting. And these days you can actually get ChatGPT as open source and then train it on your own set of data. So you could potentially train it on your own tip library and have it be able to, to have that natural language response based on the data you feed it.
Yeah, I'm curious where it will go because things are picking up speed, and I have no idea where we will be in 5 years or 10 years from now. It will be a different world, I guess.
Yeah, I'm super interested in it. I'm looking all the time. I think it's going to have a huge impact. A lot of people, almost nobody disagrees it's not going to have a huge impact, but I think a lot of people underestimate the speed at which it's going to be super impactful because
it's going faster and
just
faster.
The concept of exponential growth, if it can train itself and it can correct itself and it can it's just going to be really fast. So tip library for sure, package research. So it's not just the silent command line, where to download it and where to uninstall it, but what can I do to configure this application in that?
Exactly. We've created a form of 30 or so aspects about the application which could be interesting to share. And we created this standard so it can be interchangeable with other tooling in the future. We are working ourselves on a slimmed down version of our product because we nowadays we sell it only to enterprises, to very big companies. But we are working on a version which is small, which should be a replacement for your Excel sheet. If you have, say, like a few hundred applications to manage, then you can do it inside this tool. It will keep track of the process, the information about the applications, and it will integrate with this website as well. So we're trying to make every user like a contributor and a user as well. and this way you have all information very accessible. It's very easy to share, and everybody will benefit from it. So
Cool. All right. So we kind of decided that for this session we'd have Ronald speak to a couple of topics on the website that are generally applicable to packaging and not product focused that
yeah,
we could then talk about. So, and the first one was this future of packaging article. Can you tell us about this?
yeah. One thing I wanted to mention about this, we don't only have app tips, we only have also have blog items. So that's why it's called AppDeployNews. We are always searching for interesting topics to share. So there's always something new to read and to find if you want to explore something about MSIX or Intune or whatever. You can find every bit of information on the website. So the first topic, the future of application packaging. Well, funny story. When I started packaging, it was with Setup Access. It was the Wise Install Master, if I'm not mistaken. You had two versions, the SMS installer, right? And the Wise Install Master, which was actually the same tool. I think you
Yeah.
can remember that as well, Bob.
Yeah, I believe Microsoft like OEM'd it from Wise, and they renamed it SMS
Okay.
Installer and shipped it with that. But then,
Yeah, because it was
then,
the
but then
same tool.
Wise continued investing in improving it, and then actually that
Yeah.
Wise script editor is now part of that in Studio Suite.
Yeah. Oh, okay, okay. Because the first version of our software was written in in the script
Yeah,
language.
yeah, that's what us admins did,
Um,
right? We can't program, but we can certainly build something
yeah,
in Wise
it
script
was
editor.
amazing. Yeah, I liked it a lot. But um, when Windows or Microsoft introduced the Windows installer, the MSI technique, and yeah, you could silent install with a command line. I thought, well, that will be the end of packaging, but it was not. Then came along SoftGrid from some Softricity, which was acquired by Microsoft and called AppV. I thought, well, if we are going to virtualize it, it will be the end of packaging, and it was not. And well, then we get the layering techniques and all kinds of other stuff. And yeah, nowadays MSIX is new and hot, but yeah, where will it go? I'm not sure. I think what I can see from my perspective is that the in the early days, there was a lot of focus on technique, how to get it working, because a lot of applications wouldn't work if you did a snapshot and there were always missing stuff and you had to do all kinds of trickery to make your applications work. And I think that's getting better and better. But what we see is the whole management around the applications and the availability of applications. It's still yeah, it's still a lot of administration around it. So it's not just about making the application work. You have also managing the process and the project. So I think from that perspective, it will still be the same, even if the techniques evolve. When there may come a day when everything is run from a cloud platform, yeah, then perhaps things will change, but there's still a lot of legacy, and even current applications are still based on that legacy. So I don't think it will change a lot very soon, but yeah,
Yeah,
slowly, I
yeah,
guess.
that's one of those topics, right? I remember 5 years ago defending, the role of packaging in on-prem applications, versus cloud, because cloud is going to come eat everything. And
Yeah.
obviously it has not happened. At the same time, you can forget that you're in the browser and not in PowerPoint. When you're working, because the technology has gotten so good. But
Yeah.
even Office at this stage, for how advanced it is, there's still on-prem components that people deploy
Yeah.
for Office 365, and some of the applications don't run, in the cloud at all, or aren't as good. But yeah, Outlook is amazing. Word is amazing. It used to be I would always end up in the browser and then quickly get in the desktop app, but more and more I'm able to do the things that I want to do without jumping over, and it doesn't feel like a diminished user experience at the same time. So yeah, the idea that cloud's going to take over, um, unless you're looking way out, and what way out is impossible to predict. I don't get a lot of push on that these days. People generally understand that a lot of enterprise applications are here to stay for a number of
Yeah.
reasons, and will, at least in some form, for a really long time. But one thing
Yeah.
that has changed, well, one thing I was going to say, like old guys like us that used to package forever ago, still pretty much
Mm.
know how to do everything, because not a lot has changed with like
No.
MSI and so forth. MSIX is different, and requires a slightly different toolkit. But I think that the skills of understanding how applications work and troubleshooting are all still very relevant, and it makes it easy for someone who did it a long time ago to kind of hold their own today. One thing that cropped up kind of slowly, and at this point has well established itself, is the role of PowerShell and the PowerShell
Mm.
AppDeploy toolkit. So that
Yeah.
is kind of it's not the future of application packaging, but it's where it's evolved to right now. You can obviously take a command line and use that to deploy your application directly, but almost every customer I talk to is is using the AppDeploy toolkit to wrap their applications in a consistent, customized script, which isn't a new concept. I think I used to use a batch file called like install.bat, just so that it was easy for me to hand a package over to the deployment team and
Yeah.
not have to explain what to do. Like, you always just run this batch and it will
Yeah.
do what it needs to do. And sometimes it was a simple command line, and sometimes it was something I
Yeah.
spent days on. But for them, it was the same deliverable.
Yeah.
And the idea that you could do all the things the AppDeploy toolkit does is pretty impressive.
Mm.
And some of that is the user interface, and consistency of shutting down apps, and if you need to restart the machine or warn the user, let them snooze it, brand that and customize that. That's all very cool and attractive, and I think that's what gets people into the AppDeploy toolkit to begin with.
Yeah.
But then you learn about like all of the different functions and and things that they've written to make customization and logging and things easier for people that don't necessarily have strong PowerShell skills. So as PowerShell becomes a more and more relevant skill for the advanced administrator, I think PowerShell AppDeploy Toolkit is a great use case for somebody to have a problem to solve, which is really key to learning scripting. You can't just learn scripting and write your Hello World app and you're a scripter. You really have to have a problem to solve. And
Yeah.
there's nothing like application deployment to give you a bunch of crazy problems to solve. I see Kieran has found his way to the table. Anything to tip in on here, Kieran?
Yeah. Firstly, I'm really sorry. I don't know.
That's
I think
okay.
my internet was bad. Uh, Everything was fine. I just restarted my laptop and it let me in. I guess we are discussing
Never
about
thought of that from a troubleshooting standpoint, right? Turn it off and turn it
that's a
back
good
on.
old trick. That's a good old trick, right? Restart the laptop and it automatically fixes so many of your issues.
The next test that my dad taught me for troubleshooting was to drop it from about shoulder height. Whatever it
That's
is.
good
Turn it off,
to
turn it back on, then drop it.
drop it.
And then
If
it
it
either
doesn't
works or it's
work, it was
broken and
no
you get
good
it.
anyway.
Yeah.
So I guess we are talking about the wrapping with AppDeploy
Yeah, we're
or
talking about the
in
future
general.
of packaging, and of course that's going to lead us into MSIX. But before we get to that, I was just highlighting the direction that PowerShell AppDeploy Toolkit has taken and how widely adopted that is today.
Right. I see a lot of it is also because the kind of flexibility they give. Sometimes you might have to handle some of your, let's say, pre-installed configurations. Now, that may not necessarily be inside the package. Now, how do you deal with that, right? So do you write a script and then deploy your script first for the pre-configurations and then deploy the package? So there are a lot of complexities involved. So that is the great thing about App Deploy Toolkit, that it brings all together into a single file. So you could configure, or if you have any pre-installed configurations, and once those are completed, you could trigger the installation. And the best thing is it is a script, right? So you have complete control. Now you could add conditions inside of it within the template or within your script. Let's say if some configuration is really important for you, and if it fails, then you could really stop the installation right there. So you don't have to get into a situation where the application behaves in a different way and you start seeing a lot of support cases. So these are some the flexibilities that I really love about wrapping packages using app deploy and avoiding all those future failures. And it's also a great way.
The MSI was always a big one too, right? Because if an application was already an MSI, then you're told don't repackage it, and the easy thing about repackaging is you can get all your customizations in there, and you don't have to figure out exactly what's going on. You just make it part of your snapshot, and now it's your deployment. But suddenly we were all told, well, don't do that if it's an MSI, and a lot of things were MSI. So now you have to figure out this whole new skill of creating a transform and getting it in there, and not everything lends itself to these kinds of changes. So the PowerShell Deploy Toolkit really gives us a place where it doesn't matter what type of package it is. Now you have a consistent way for your EXEs and for your MSIs to inject any customizations, and you don't have to learn something new, really.
Right. One thing that I really want to bring up, this is based on one of the conversations I had with one of our customers, and I really loved the way they were using the app deploy or the wrapping functionality within Admin Studio. They had a bunch of packages that are called inside the script, and based on a certain condition that gets satisfied on a machine during the execution of the script, a particular package will be installed. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't imagine there could be any better way of doing such complex installations other than wrapping. So I can really see how it fits into this topic of future of application or future of packaging, that these kind of complex situations are a lot easier to handle and manage within within a PowerShell script using the wrapping.
Yep. And then this clearly leads us right into the topic of MSIX. Ronald?
A favorite topic.
Yeah. MSIX has some limitations. From my experience, when I look at our customer base, they consist of large organizations, and they have a lot of different applications, a lot of legacy stuff, and for this legacy applications, they run into the limitations, and it's like I said, legacy applications with complex dependencies, limited support for custom actions, limited control of user data, no support for Windows services, and limited tooling. well, I must say things are getting better each day, obviously. So maybe they not all apply anymore, but
Yeah, in all those areas, we've seen improvements, right? So services
exactly. But
are now possible, but they exist
yeah.
outside the container. So even initially, there was no like context menu or file type association triggers, but now there are. But of course, those
Hmm.
can't live inside the virtual container of the MSIX package. So
Hmm.
the way around these things and services as well is to put these things outside the package, which starts to deteriorate the benefit of
Exactly.
MSIX. But if
Yeah.
you're really hell bent on getting all your old applications in, there's problems to overcome that obviously haven't been rapidly addressed, but are being addressed. And I think we've gotten to a place now where MSIX is pretty capable and certainly shows a lot of problems. So when it comes to the future of packaging, it's pretty clear that MSIX is going to be it. But when, I guess, is the topic of this section, and when,
Yeah.
to me, boils down to when we get a couple of big vendors that provide MSIX setups directly. We've
Yeah.
seen just a little bit of that. It's been very slow, even from Microsoft.
Hmm.
Frustratingly, I'm aware that they are working on getting Office on MSIX, but when they're honest, their goal is to kind of hide that. Success, from their point of view, would be you get the new Office and you install it and use it, and you don't know that it's now an MSIX package. That's not what we want to hear. We want
Hmm.
MSIX front and center. We want it to be a requirement. I mean, that's really how they drove Windows Installer to be so widely adopted in its early days. It was required
Hmm.
for logo certification, but they've almost taken the opposite approach with MSIX in that any application can now be in the Windows Store as long as it has a silent installation capability. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be AppX, it doesn't have to be MSIX, it can be legacy. It just has to have that basic
Yeah.
capability. So they've almost gone in the other direction in terms of encouraging
Yeah.
MSIX.
Probably to fill up the store.
Yeah, obviously they're more invested in the success of the store than they are MSIX, but
Exactly. But it
it
could be
really needs something to
strategic.
push it along.
Yeah.
And it looked for a little while like it was going to be um, app attach. So app
Hmm.
attach, if you have Windows virtual machines, allows you to basically sideload an application into an image instantly. So it's not a silent install, it's not streaming, it's just like you'd mount a drive, you're mounting an application and all of its changes
Yeah.
just show up. So
Okay.
that's great for like instant deployment without cluttering your
Hmm.
image. It helps address the whole VDI use case of I don't want to have all my applications in my VDI session, which is
Hmm.
static, which means I have to update it all the time. So it addresses a big problem, and I saw a lot of interest in that. And I haven't seen that interest drop, but I guess I'm waiting for the next wave of encouragement for people to jump on MSIX. Now, Karen, when we talk to customers, we get a lot of customers interested in MSIX, and that's been for a very long time. But more and more, we're hearing people actually using MSIX and not just kicking the tires.
Correct. We have definitely started seeing that trend in last few months. If you look at the history now, it's been 5 years. MSIX was launched. They have come a long way. They have addressed some of the problems uh, that were present in the initial days. For example, device drivers. There is a way to address them. Maybe not a very neat way, but still there is a way that you could work around with them. But some of the things I think they're very clear they're never going to address. For example, custom actions, right? So I don't imagine there will be anytime custom actions within MSIX. So I think it is at a point where you need to look at if you're good to have this application in the MSIX format, or do you want to continue it in the legacy format like MSI or EXE? Because from where I see, MSIX is a container, and it may not satisfy all the uh, applications where there could be a lot of heavy interactions with the operating system or something like that. So there
Yeah.
are going to be some limitations, and that may continue forever. At some point, I think you could be an ISV or an enterprise. You'll have to uh, step back and look at, okay, now I'm okay with this, uh, with what MSIX offers, and let me convert at least these set of applications to MSIX. Now, like you mentioned, there are many benefits with MSIX. Uh, Deployments is one of the major benefits that I see. And the best thing is, with the containerization, you can get away with the legacy problem of conflicts and compatibility, all those things. And you can be very sure that your application will be deployed successfully, and most importantly, uninstallation.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
that is the best thing about MSIX. So if you're okay with these benefits, then you can see, out of these many applications that I have in my portfolio, these are some simple applications. For example, Notepad++ or 7-zip. These are generally used in all the enterprises, and you might want to start moving them to MSIX. So it becomes really easy for you to manage those. And also the way MSIX handles updates, it makes it a lot easier for you to move to the new versions, latest versions. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it
I
is at a
think
point where
updates is
you have to
underrated.
take a decision.
Uh,
Yeah.
Updates could be the biggest benefit of MSIX that we just
Yes.
haven't seen happening in the real world to realize the benefit of it. But the idea is all these vendors, they have their automatic updates that we as admins go in and figure out how to turn off because we don't want that. With
Right.
MSIX, the source for that package could be the vendor website. They update to the new version, and now you, with a policy, can decide, does this application automatically update or not? Plus, it's updating side by side. You don't have to restart the application. If you're hosting your own source for the MSIX package, you can update your source and then decide how it rolls out. It's smoother, it's more efficient, and it provides consistency for this update capability that right now is pretty ad hoc, and we do a rip and replace, we install over the top and hope it gets in there okay.
Yeah.
But we have to test, and this really does stand to be a huge benefit. But this all or nothing approach for MSIX is probably its biggest hindrance, right? Because if you have it in your head that I'm going to be all Windows installer, I'm going to repackage everything to Windows installer that isn't Windows
Yeah.
installer, and Windows installer is it for me. I love it. I saw a lot of that back in the day, but I don't see it that much these days. These days, people generally understand that, okay, if it's a good command line, I'm going to wrap it PowerShell Deploy Toolkit. If it doesn't
Yep.
play well, I'm going to repackage it, and then I can still wrap it in the Deploy Toolkit for consistency.
Right.
That's already kind of a bifurcated approach where you're saying, for this application, I'm going to do this. For this application, I'm going to do that. So for MSIX adoption, it's really add that to the top, right? Start off,
Yep.
Does it work MSIX? Yes, easily out of the box, no problem. Great, you got yourself a winning start there. But if you want everything MSIX, or you're not going to do MSIX, you may very well never get there.
Yeah, that's true.
So along the MSIX road here, Ronald, we've got error reference.
Yeah,
One
this
point
is
there.
yeah,
Sorry.
it's an error
No,
reference for the different techniques. Sorry. No, go ahead,
Go ahead,
Kiran.
Ron. I was saying, to add to what Bob was saying, recently we know Tim Mangan released a report card for MSIX, which he does every year. He has been doing it, thanks to him. It was good to see that within his sample set of packages that he generally puts through his rigorous testing, he says close to 80, almost 80% of the packages were successfully converted to MSIX. But of course, there is a caveat there that it needed a fix up. Now, I see 80% as a good percentage, and I understand from the report card that Tim got really a good mix of applications where he was expecting to see problems when they're converted to MSX. So that seems really positive, and I think things are moving in the right direction for MSX.
Yeah, yeah, and you bring up a good point. You know, Tim's contribution to the community has been immense, and he has his own tools and his own fix up too, where it's an alternative to the file redirection fix up that he's determined handles more cases that he's encountered in his testing. And I don't know anybody doing more thorough testing than him. Certainly not documenting it for the world. So we all owe him a debt of gratitude in helping MSIX succeed.
For sure.
But for an error, which we're certainly going to run into, you've got a nice reference here on AppDeployNews, Ronald?
Yeah, yeah, we have been searching for errors and will keep on searching for errors for the main technologies, and MSIX is obviously the most new one and interesting one, I guess. So yeah, there's a section on the website which handles most errors, and if people know new errors which are not here, we like to be informed as well. So.
And can people contribute to these through
Yeah.
comments or something? Because I'm thinking like an error reference is interesting, like it's a good starting point, but that's probably available a lot of places. What you really want is some contextual. Hey, if you encounter this, you know, this is one reason why, and this is how I fixed it. Like that kind of, you know, notes from the field approach to solving the problems.
Yeah. Every article on the website is able to receive comments. So that's one. And we also have a contribute. You can create a contribute account, which you can see on this slide in the top right. So people can become contributors to the website as well.
Cool. Yeah, there's a couple questions stacking up, and I know we're gonna run out of time as we always do, but there's a comment that I think is relevant right here. A viewer says their main issue with MSIX is the requirement for signing. Managing hundreds of AppV packages right now illustrates a nightmare in trying to manage certificates for all applications. And this really has been one of the biggest pain points for adoption is what about these certificates? What about when they expire? And I think that's probably, Karen, let's make a note to dive into that topic in a future roundtable, because I think it's one of those things that might be less intimidating if you look at it a certain way, but it's a concept unfamiliar to a lot of people. It just looks like an administrative nightmare to have to manage, and it might not be all that bad.
Yeah, it's not. The way you want to look at it is you don't want to have one certificate for each application. You could have a single certificate signing all the applications. That will immediately reduce all the complexity. But I agree that it deserves its own topic on one of these roundtables where we could get into details.
Yeah, I think we can come up with some good best practices and even just speak to the way that we've seen other customers go about it.
Sure. Yep.
Very related, troubleshooting.
Yeah, troubleshooting. This article discusses the first step in troubleshooting using the event viewer. As I told you earlier, a few years ago I talked to a student. He was doing a system administrator course, and he was having some trouble with an assignment. So I told him, well, let's first look at the event viewer. And he said, what? They didn't teach it at school. So he's supposed to be a system administrator, and he didn't know what the event viewer was. So I was a bit amazed that something so basic is not taught in school anymore somehow. But yeah, that's your first step where you can troubleshoot.
Yeah, Yeah,
you can
the
chime in,
complexity
Bob.
around MSIX really comes from the trace issue, right? The fact that it's running in a virtual machine means that, when it looks for a file, it's not going to be where it expects it to be, and other things, virtual container related. But the idea that you then have to fix that as a runtime issue. So when you create a fix-up, you're basically replacing the target executable for the application shortcut. So instead of the shortcut for Reader going to the Adobe Reader executable, it's going to go to your fix-up, which launches the Adobe Reader, handling the situations identified in the fix-up. And that's why we have to take the shortcut from the application and put it on this new application so that it looks right. There's a bunch of things that ideally you're using the right tools. I won't name any specifically because it's obvious, but the right tools can make this very easy. Not just not having to worry about shortcuts, but even identifying what fix-ups are necessary, and having those kind of handed to you on a silver platter versus trying to figure out, okay, it's not working. Why isn't it working? If you trace the application, that's where you should see any runtime issues, and prompt you to handle the fix-ups from there. Anything
Right.
to add on fix-up real quick, Karen?
Yeah, I think Microsoft did a good job in anticipating that there could be runtime issues after you convert legacy into MSIX. So they've introduced this fix-ups through a framework called Packet Support Framework. Now, what they've done, another good thing that they've done is within those fix-ups, they've added a fix-up and called it as trace. I think the big challenge is when you see the installation failing, you know it failed because it's visible, but sometimes the runtime errors, you do not know what actually failed. Right, so I think trace fix up is one that you want to apply to your MSIX when you're, let's say, testing it to make sure it's ready for deployment, or is it a good MSIX that I can use for your production, right? So they could use the trace fix up, inject it into MSIX, and then, like you said, run the application like in your UAT, user acceptance testing, and based on the actions that you're performing on that MSIX, the trace will be looking at if there are any runtime errors. And later you could always go back to the logs, and then you will know what are the runtime issues. Now, good thing is for some of those and most of those, there is a fix-up available that you could use. Generally, in my experience working with some customers and various interactions, it mostly looks like it has got to do with the file, like what you're saying, right? Application is trying to look for a file and it's not there because of the container problems, right? So most of the issues that are commonly seen are with the file issues, and that can be fixed using the fix-up called file redirection. And there are other fix-ups like registry fix-ups and all that should cover most of your runtimes. And that is the best thing, that you don't have to write a code to do that. It just needs some configurations, and you should be all good. And if you have, like tools like MSX Editor and Admin Studio, we make it a lot easier.
Cool. Okay, we are almost out of time, so I figure we'll squeeze in a couple of questions. One here is, do you see many organizations using Admin Studio to migrate SCCM deployments into Intune Win32 installs? Most definitely. That is a growing use case of people moving from Configuration Manager to Intune, and we can help automate that. We have the ability to wrap it and convert it to an Intune Win package, and we're actually, Karen and I are in regular conversations about how to improve things and make it better. And this is one of those areas that we think could really use even more attention. Obviously, you can do it today, and people are doing it today, but we're looking at how we can help do so better in bulk. So you can take a large list of applications and pull them in from Configuration Manager, convert them to Intune Win, and publish them to Intune. Those are all things that we can do, but the wrapping part right now, or the conversion to Intune Win, is something you have to do individually for each package. So we're looking to make that even easier in the future. For a medium-sized company with 10,000 devices, what is the size of the endpoint management team to support OSD updates, app deployment, and so forth? Some curiosity around here on what other companies are doing. Karen, why don't you take that one?
Devices is one. There is another factor that should be accounted to really understand the team size, and that is the number of applications that you have in your portfolio that are under your management. So there are two factors, and another one is there any automation, or are you 100% manual? Are you using any automation tools or capabilities that for example, right? You could have auto deployment rules set in the configuration manager that you could deploy, or you could have automation to get a new version of an application or updates whenever it's made available by the vendor. So there are a lot of factors. So I don't know if it would be fair to say, hey, this is the number of engineers or packagers that you should be having in your team without having all those details. But I'm finding it difficult to really arrive at a fixed number.
Yeah, I don't think I could put an algorithm on it either.
Right.
But anecdotally, I would say a team typically gets to like 4 to 7, and I see it kind of hang there. So 10,000 node devices is a pretty, probably medium to large enterprise. I'd expect somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 people, and those 5 are too frequently like afterthoughts, like who are we going to put on this team, and you end up with some support guys because they understand troubleshooting a little bit, or maybe somebody can script a little bit. The assembly of that team and having the right people on that team is usually the bigger factor that I see people struggling with versus just the sheer size of the team. But obviously the more automation you have, the better you're going to be able to handle more with less. But there's always going to be applications that require a lot of hands-on, and if you throw in the time that you have to spend managing the endpoint management system, that's a skill set and a bunch of work of its own, not just the application part. So
right.
In a large environment, I'll see those teams broken up, where there's a team responsible for the deployment and the care and feeding of Intune and Configuration Manager, and that's distinct from the packaging team, and potentially even distinct from the team managing the gold image and rollouts of new operating systems. Our obligatory come to our community. There's a thread on there requesting suggestions on future discussions. I think MSX package signing might be a good one. Our next one will be June 6th. We don't have any plans to change it at this point, and that will be the next one. And I think we got it on the minute. We still had a lot to talk about, and there's still some open questions. I think we'll take some of these to the community, and it's great to have ideas for future things to talk about. So your questions help feed that too, even if you don't take the time to go to that post on the forum and respond directly about future topics. So thank you. Appreciate you making it. And thank you, Karen, for fighting your way to the table. We liked having you here. And Ronald, excellent having you. Thank you, and best of luck with AppDeployNews.
Thank you, Bob.
Good luck, Ron. Thank you.
Okay, bye, Karen.